Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this morning's episode of Trending, brought to you in association with Iconic Coffee. If you head over to shop.iconic.com and use the code TRENDING, you get 10% off. I'm joined once again by Richard Willett. We've both been looking at the events overnight, more missiles flying back and forth in this crazy world. But there was one particularly crazy moment, Richard, that you want to talk about.
There really was, and this was early in the day, and it's very weird to be sitting there and watching the live feed of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and thinking, this is just strange. I feel guilty for watching this. I don't know about you, but it's like, this is horrific. If it was the other way around, it just felt really weird and horrible, but also you can't take your eyes off it because it's obviously, it affects us all.
Yeah,
but it did feel
you're right.
weird.
It's like watching a snuff movie, isn't it? In a way.
Yeah.
Like you're watching missiles drop on apartment blocks in Tehran and in Tel Aviv. It is very strange.
It's really odd. It really is. So shocking moment. Iranian state TV is bombed live on air by Israel. And I don't know if you've seen this. We've got a clip. Just have a little quick look at this. This is something else.
که شنیدید صدای متجاوز به خاک وطن، صدای متجاوز به صدای حق و حقیقت است. آنچه که ملاحظه کردید، صدایی که شنیدید، فضای غبارآلود استادیوم
I mean, there was a lot of finger wagging before the bomb dropped. I've got to say, that was my first takeaway when I was watching that video. I was thinking, why is she wagging her finger? Oh my goodness me, they've just been bombed.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole thing comes down. And later on, that lady was back on TV on another channel. An Iranian state TV live broadcast was abruptly halted after the building was bombed by Israel, sending the presenter scrambling from her desk amid smoke and debris. I believe in the background, obviously, the interpretations of it is that we're live, as if to say, get back on there, do your job. Hang on a minute. I think
surprise me.
Good cut. Yeah, the disruption occurred during a live transmission from the Islamic Republic of Iran broadcasting. That's not all the broadcasting of Iran, obviously, but it is a major part of it. Iran's state TV has reported that a number of its employees were injured in the Israeli strike on its headquarters in Tehran. So to say that this is, this is just strategic military bombing of Iran is nonsense. They've gone for the TV stations now, and they'll probably try and tie it in, but who cares what they say anymore? They'll just lie through their teeth anyway. So I think we should, not really kind of worry ourselves of what lies they're going to come out with next, because they will lie. That's the nature of what they do. But live on TV, they bombed the building. As you can see, it's not a massive building as well, outside. And imagine that happening to the BBC here. You know what I mean? It's flip it and just think how different that would be if it was, someone at the BBC there presenting.
Well, that's the point, Rich. It's again, we've spoke about it over the last couple of days. It's that Western exceptionalism where it's okay when we do it. So I've seen lots of people celebrating and saying, well, it's Iranian state TV, so it's misinformation, it's propaganda. It's like, well, yeah, but you've been accused of that over the last 5 years. It's no different from the BBC. BBC is the state TV here. Fox News is Donald Trump's TV station. Let's have it right.
Yeah.
And if Fox News was bombed or the BBC was bombed, you'd be going mad, and all these people would be going mad. It's pretty obvious to me, Rich. It's just about controlling the narrative. That's not to say that Iranian state TV doesn't lie. Of course it does. All of them do. They all do. But it still puts out a different perspective, and they don't want the different perspective. They want, this is the truth. So this is the Western view of what's going on, and you must listen, you must stand with Israel and all this kind of stuff. Whereas I'm not sure what the station was. Was it Press TV, or was it another Iranian state? Because I think they've got
it's got an acronym, but it was Iranian State TV. That's all it says in here.
Right. It may well have been Press TV, or it could be but I think they've got more than one that the state runs. But it's what they've done in Gaza. Obviously, they've killed journalists left, right, and centre in Gaza, hundreds and hundreds of them. They've banned Western journalists going into Gaza because they don't want you to see what's going on. Did the same with Russia. Obviously you've got all the Western propaganda putting out what Putin is and what's going on in Ukraine and what Russia is, and how after Ukraine falls, it's us next. Exactly what they're saying about Iran. And so you had RT and Sputnik putting out a totally different perspective, and they don't want us thinking for ourselves. They don't want us looking at the BBC and Fox News and RT and Sputnik and Press TV, taking bits from all of them and going, well, that makes sense, that doesn't, that makes sense, that doesn't. They don't want us doing that. And so that's what this is about, Rich. And it's mad to see people cheering it on. Lots of people cheering it on, actually.
Well, there will be. Yeah, of course there will be, because they've been brainwashed by their local state TV or, county TV or whatever you want to call it, to think the opposite. So we know in Israel that they give a certain narrative. They're born into this society where they think the world hates them. That's propagated by the media. So it's cellular. So they're giving you an understanding of the world within these little pockets, so you can fight each other off against each other. Basically, they don't want to know. That's why you like Russian TV, the Chinese kind of internet as well. In some places is firewalled. They need that firewall, and that's what I was saying yesterday. That the fact we have the internet gives us this connection that we've never had before, and it's meant to be the alternative media's job, God forbid, to actually give you kind of like a summary of it all, and then let you decide for yourself what is true. It's meant to be. It doesn't
they're
always work out that way.
backtracking now. Have you seen that, Rich? The alternative media is backtracking hugely now with Trump, trying to condemn things. It's like, mate, I'm old enough to remember when Donald Trump was the peaceful president who was bringing down the deep state, and me and you and my dad and many others, we were all blackpilled for saying, no, he's seriously not. He's seriously not. And here we have it. And now they're all scrambling. So they've made all their money off the algorithms, promoting Trump, getting him into office. Yeah, money, 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 money. And now they're looking at him and they're thinking, I'm losing. I'm losing now. I'm going to lose my base. I'm not going to have a leg to stand. Yeah, call him out, call him out. I mean, people can change their views. I'm not saying that they can't. But the idea that he was a peaceful president who was bringing down the deep state when he's clearly owned by Israel from the beginning, that is, if you couldn't see that, I'm not sure you're allowed to call yourself a journalist, really.
No, you could see that. That's the problem. You could see that, and you didn't want to see that because your audience would just disappear and scamper. Now the audiences are going to scamper anyway. You're trying to salvage the rest like a bloody Noah's Ark of, MAGA on there. Get as many on as you can for the next phase of it when they bring JD Vance in. It's, well, if we're still here by then. And it's quite obvious that we've been calling this out, but we've been calling this out for a very long time. You've got a clip coming up with your dad, how obvious this is to anyone who's genuinely looking into this without a religious affiliation, without a political affiliation of our job is to please stop killing people. We don't really want to live in a world where I'm connected to an internet of bodies where I can't do anything I want to do. I quite like my freedoms for everyone.
Exactly.
That's the common ground that we should all be on. Well, I thought we were on, but no, we're not. And, when you're not on that common ground, you're always going to have these things to cling on to that are going to rise and fall, as some Chinese man said later on. And it's not going to last. It's not going to last.
Well, they're already moving. I've seen this, Rich. They're already moving the goalposts because remember, it was about stopping Iran getting a nuclear weapon because Iran was weeks away from getting a nuclear weapon that they can destroy Israel and Europe and America and the moon. And then obviously people have then started going, well, you've been saying that since the early 80s, mate. You've been saying Netanyahu. So not even like people saying, the same bloke saying that they're weeks away or moments away or whatever. So they weren't buying that. So then all of a sudden it became, we're trying to free the women of Iran. So it's not about nuclear. It's not about a nuclear warhead anymore. It's about freeing the women of Iran because what you've done is you've tried the nuclear aspect, and people have gone, "I'm not buying that because I've heard that with Iraq." So now you've moved to this, and seeing like Tommy Robinson is another one coming out. We're praying for the women of Iran. We want to free the women of Iran. Shut up, do you? What are you talking about? It's nothing to do with that. Couldn't care less. At least be honest and say what it's about. Like, I've got no skin in the game for the Iranian regime. I've got no skin in the game with any of these regimes because if you go high enough, they're all owned by the same people. They're all run by the same dark forces anyway. So I'm not, because this is when, if you call out what Israel's doing in Gaza, which they're still doing, by the way, and everyone's looking the other way, Gazan civilians are still being massacred and shot while they're trying to get food while they're starving. That's still happening. If you call out Israel for that, oh, you must be pro-Hamas then. You must be pro-Hezbollah then. Oh, if you don't want America to join the war and alongside their greatest ally, really? What's Israel ever done for you again? Don't worry about it. Don't ask questions. Greatest ally. Then you must be pro-terrorism and pro-Iran. I'm not pro any of them. I'm pro-humanity. And I'm sorry, but if this continues as it is, then that is not good for humanity. Period.
No, there won't be many of us left. There was someone put a tweet out last night about America's not some abuse boyfriend for his girlfriend, which he was saying is Israel, getting her out of trouble because she keeps getting in fights when she's drunk. But that's exactly what she is. That's exactly what America is. It is. And not only that, America bought that girlfriend a $4 billion ring recently to punch people with. It's not only that, they're funding it. They're giving her the alcohol.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. That's
well,
exactly
we said, Rich,
what you are.
When we were sat here on Thursday, so before Israel had even attacked, but it was obvious they were going to, we sat here and that was the exact description pretty much, was that Israel is like the annoying skinny guy that gets drunk on a night out and starts fights because he knows his bigger mates will stick up for him. And that and what's happening is the people around the bigger mate, so maybe the girlfriends of the bigger mates, are going, guys, stop sticking up for this guy. So the American people are that now. They're done with it, really. Yeah. And then you've got, obviously, the MAGA influencers, which are all bought and paid for, and, you know, the politicians, which are, you know, showing themselves as probably being connected to Epstein by how pro-Israel they are at the moment. They're the ones that are egging him on to join, but the people don't want it. And it could be the end of Trump, really. Well, I think it will be eventually.
I think he's done, and I think Netanyahu, they're both done anyway. But regardless of that, they're small fry, and what it is they're irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. They're here today, gone tomorrow, irrelevant seat. It doesn't matter. It's not really them. They'll just plug another lunatic, a JD Vance in there, and someone else from Israel in there. So we need to get rid of this ideology behind it, which is about this Greater Israel project. And it hasn't anything to do with the Israeli people. Again, they are protesting in their thousands on the street to get rid of the lunatic that's getting them killed. Yeah. It's not about them. So it's about eradicating the ideology behind it. Now, this was the IRIB, so IRIB TV channel bombed by the UK-US alliance and EU alliance behind Israel. So they're just saying that they funded it. Yeah, IRIB was the channel. I was just looking the name up.
Another interesting thing as well, which is worth talking about, because obviously we keep seeing all these pictures of this is what Iran used to be like. You know, the women weren't oppressed and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, yes, that's true. That's great. But why did it change? Because of a US-backed coup and an overthrowing of a democratic government and an installing of a puppet, a regime change, which is what you're trying to do now. You caused this. You caused this. And now we're seeing, I saw an interesting post from Doc Malik who shared this morning. So the guy that they're now talking about installing in Iran after they've brought down the current regime, you know, another regime change, yet again, paid for by your tax dollars and almost certainly your lives, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes down to it. His daughter, so the princess of Iran, has just married into a Jewish family. And you're like, you can see this connection. I mean, marry who you want, whatever, but you can see this connection of basically trying, in terms of the Greater Israel project and the expansion of it, basically, obviously they've destroyed Syria. They've bought and paid for Egypt. They've bought and paid for Saudi Arabia. They're destroying Lebanon. Jordan are a waste of space. They're massacring Gaza. They've annexed the West Bank. The problem in that region that would essentially stand up and go, no thanks, is Iran. So by basically cutting the balls off Iran, essentially, they're getting rid of that opposition. And people listen to this and go, yeah, but what about Turkey? It's like, well, yeah, but Turkey will be handed almost certainly part, if not half of Syria as part of that deal of them shutting up. So they'll be happy as well. So you can see how this Greater Israel project is coming in. And, you know, I don't know if you saw this Netanyahu speech a couple of days ago. Well, actually, no, it was last night, actually, where he's talking about the US joining, because obviously he's begging them to join, where he says he understands Make America Great Again, So he understands Make America Great, but he doesn't understand Make America Dead. Now, on the face of it, you think that's saying if you don't help me get rid of Iran, then Iran will take you out. I didn't hear it like that, Rich. I read that as a threat.
Yeah. Well, it is a threat. It is a threat in any way, shape, or form. It's putting fear inside you. So you do it's exactly what it is. It's just bullying. And please explain to Kooky Tucker Carlson that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's all very well. I'd rather they didn't. I'd rather no one didn't. But Israel can have one after what they've been doing for the last 2.5 well, going back 50 plus years. I mean, that's all right for them to have one, is it? Oh, yeah, but we need one to stop them coming at you. Well, actually, all you're going to do is going to go through Iran and come round the back way to take over. So we're all the direction at the satanic inversion of things as well. So you've got Trump there going on about Kooky Tucker because, I mean, I don't know skin in the game with Tucker. I believe he's a Kabbalist and he's partly to blame for the promotion of Trump for a long time. Trump wouldn't be where he was if it wasn't people like Tucker. So they've got, some real backpedaling to do here. And he was on with Steve Bannon, and we know Steve Bannon has been in with Trump for years. Yeah. So, they all hate each other, by the way. They all screw each other over. Don't think that they're all best friends. That's not how that works. That's a cesspool. But, it's why can't Iran have them if Israel have them? I don't think, personally, anyone should have them. No. But, it doesn't make logical sense. And also, they're a country of their own. You don't get to tell them what they can and can't have.
Well, Israel's got 400 of them, so we're told, even though that was a conspiracy theory just a few years ago. You weren't allowed to talk about it. The other thing, which I think is a valid point to make, is there's only one country that's ever used them. So we're told. One country that's ever used them, and they're the ones telling everyone else what they can and can't have. Make it make sense. Yep. The other point that we'll move on to, Rich, which is all still part of it. Let's have a look at this clip, first of all. This is my dad. I think this is 2009, but it might even be earlier than that, but we'll say 2009 because it's the latest. So it's pushing 20 years ago. This is where he's talking about the plan for the Third World War.
What I've been saying now, way back in the 1990s, the idea is for this Third World War to involve Russia and China against the West.
Yeah. Oceania versus Eurasia, yeah.
Yeah, in the 1984 kind of scenario. And what you have now is the demonization of Russia. Have you noticed that? How suddenly we got the demonization of Russia? And what's opening up in the Ukraine, while all this is starting to go on in the Middle East, is another front against Russia. Because, it's very easy to see how Russia can be pulled into this Middle Eastern conflict by supporting Syria, because destroying Syria is part of ISIS's agenda and American agenda and NATO's agenda.
And also Iran as well.
Yeah, and destroying Iran, yeah. So you can see how the pieces in the game are being moved around to create the scenario that Pike talked about. And it's a setup to attempt to trigger World War III. World wars change worlds. And if you have a global agenda, then global problems allow you to offer global solutions. And if you look how the world was transformed by the First World War and the Second World War, the world was a completely different place after both of those wars. And the idea all along has been to have a Third World War to complete the transformation into a global state with a world government and a world army dictating to the global population.
So with that in mind, Rich, there was a tweet or a post on X. Are they called posts now? No one's actually confirmed to me what they're called if they're not tweets anymore, but okay, post. By the Chinese president, Xi Jinping. And we spoke about this off air. It's really well written, isn't it? Mm. It's like it's been written by like Alfred Lord Tennyson or something, like some poet laureate. But there's clearly something underneath this tweet. Now, obviously, having just listened to my dad, where he's talking about the fact that Iran, Russia, China versus the West, that's the Third World War plan for sure. So this is the post. The world can move on without the United States. 100 years ago, the British Empire dominated global commerce, commanding more than 20% of the world's wealth. Many believe the sun would never set. 200 years ago, France bestrode Europe's stage, its armies feared, its culture envied. Napoleon declared himself immortal. 400 years ago, the Spanish crown reigned from Manila to Mexico, its treasure fleets groaning with silver and silk. It's nice, isn't it? It's poetic, to be fair, Jinping. Well done, mate. Not that I think you wrote it. The kings thought their glory would last eternal. Each empire proclaimed itself indispensable. Each was ultimately eclipsed. Power wanes, influence migrates, and legitimacy dies the moment it's assumed rather than earned. I mean, dude's got a point. Should America forfeit the world's respect? I think it already has, to be honest, G.
I think that ship sailed.
Yeah, a long time ago. It sailed and sank. It will discover what every fallen empire learned too late. The world moves on, always. Now, like I say, he's got a point, historically, in terms of those fallen empires. What I would say, though, is, yes, the empires have fallen, but the forces behind those empires haven't fallen. The forces behind those empires have simply just moved on to the next empire, like buying a new car. Like, it looks different and it sounds different. The driver's the same, but America will fall because it's supposed to. That's the point. It's meant to fall, and none of this is happening organically, Rich, is it? Because the fact that you can listen to my dad, he's not Mystic Meg. It's a sense that there's information out there. You can see the plan, like he says. Know the plan. You can see the journey, and here we are. It's all playing out, mate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's probably a bit of Kabbalistic coding in there somewhere with the silver and the gold and all of this immortality sort of reference in there if you wanted to pick it out, possibly. But again, it's the same cult behind everything in terms of the last at least 2,000 plus years. They have been doing this, and it's been really sped up since the 1700s. It's, again, they rise and fall. It's, as you said, I see it more as a corporation. They set up a corporation, they hide behind, which is a country, and then they rise and they fall, and it's just a mechanism to get you to the next one. So the next one wants to be the global X-Corp of the world, and this is where the destination is. And when you look at this ideology behind it, they only have a certain amount of time, which is a couple of 100 years left, to get this done in accordance with their mentality or their messianic nonsense. I think it's 2245 is the year that they need it done, or their God's going to come back and ruin those lot. It's mad. I'm not saying any of it makes any sense, but this is the core that runs through all of these things, and this could be traced back 6,000 years. That's how people like your dad, Jordan Maxwell, many others through the years have been able to trace this, because it has a system. And like anything, it makes logical sense, because we are creative beings. We are narrative beings. So for us to plan for the future, what have you got to do? You've got to put the narrative in your mind and play it out like a film. If you to understand the past, you play the narrative out in your mind. So there has to be a narrative for people to be able to come together and create something, a new world. So we can follow that narrative, that story arc. And it's pretty obvious that once you tap into it, what's going to happen next.
Yeah. The next story, moving on, Rich. Do you know what? I sat and did trending in the afternoon yesterday, and I was like, I'm going to endeavour to find a positive story. I mean, we're moving on to grooming gangs, mate. So I've let the audience down. So what's this story, Rich? This is coming out of the UK, mate.
The grooming gangs one. Now, this is really interesting. I was around Maggie Oliver a while back when it all first broke. I was making some film content with her, and I was in a taxi with her driving to Sky News. Lovely people at Sky News, by the way. BBC was a bit weird. And she was kind of frustrated with how it was being put on certain elements like the Islamic faith, and she wasn't keen on that stuff. Back then, Toby Robinson was obviously using it for his own understanding, and he has a legitimate grief with this kind of way of living, in terms of, I think one of his family members was attacked by someone of that faith and background. So I understand it, but you can't just blanket everyone in all this stuff. So police to collect ethnicity. No, start again.
Ethnicity.
What?
Easy
That's
for you
the
to
one.
say, Rich.
No, it really isn't. Data for all cases of child sexual abuse. Requirements made as reviews find overrepresentation of Asian men among grooming gangs and suspects. And that's the issue that people are having, the Asian men term. Obviously, that brings a lot of different cultures into that. But that does include, the Pakistani grooming gangs. But we have UK grooming gangs. One came out just yesterday. There was one busted as well in a very similar area. So this is Yvette Cooper's condemned damning failures by the authorities to protect children from grooming gangs, as she announced there would be a formal requirement on police for the first time to collect ethnicity. No,
Ethnicity.
do it.
Ethnicity.
Yep, and nationality data for all cases of child sexual abuse and exploitation. The Home Secretary confirmed the government would accept all 12 recommendations of Louis Gray's KDC's rapid review. So basically, they're going to need to. I mean, this could be seen as part of this data harvesting thing. I think there's legitimate concerns there. I mean, what's your take on it? I can understand the legitimate concerns there. I think the wording Asian grooming gangs is probably not as specific as most people would like, but I get why they're doing it. There is a legitimate angle to this as well, but that doesn't also bring in the Islamic faith, and I think that's where the lines get a little bit blurred.
I think it's about time there's an investigation into what went on in terms of the grooming gangs, and it's not what went on actually; it's what's still going on in 50 plus cities across the United Kingdom. What I would ask is it going to be a legitimate inquiry or is it going to be a whitewash? Because let's have it right. It's great to celebrate the fact that these people are going to, have an investigation, but if they're marking their own homework, then just what are we finding out? In terms of the ethnicity, and stuff like that, there could be a data part of it. I think also, I don't necessarily have a problem with that, because if you've got an overrepresentation of a certain demographic, whatever that demographic is, then you can legitimately ask, is there a connection to, not necessarily that way of life. I'm trying to word it better than that, but is there culture. Something in that culture that maybe would have you ask questions, in which case you ask those questions. You should ask all questions. Support that. I have one. What I'm thinking right now, though, Rich, bearing in mind you've had the Tories saying that Labour needs to have an inquiry into the grooming gangs. They were in charge for 14 years and did nothing. Nothing. Suddenly they're pushing for one. Reform are obviously massively pushing for one. Labour are now saying, okay, we're going to have one. But why now? Is it legitimately because the pressure has built against you and therefore you can't really not have one? Because public opinion is clearly against that, against you whitewashing it and ignoring it and kicking it down the road, which is what the Tories did for 14 years, despite what they say now. But I've always got a tinfoil hat on, Rich, and part of me wonders if, because everything is about division all the time, the more divided we are, the better as far as these people are concerned, because we're more controllable, because we're scrapping with each other rather than just looking up and going, oh, we're both being screwed. With what's going on in Iran and the Middle East, and clearly wanting Britain to get involved, the US to get involved, the West in general to get involved in this conflict, they need to manufacture consent for that. There's no support for it really in the US, so I'm waiting for that false flag to get that support. And there's no support for it in the UK really, apart from a handful of idiots and warmongers. So do people en masse differentiate between a Pakistani grooming gang and Muslims in general? Not really.
No.
Not really. So if you want to go to war with Iran, Muslims, is it then possibly to your advantage to have the British public look upon Muslims unfavorably at that point in time? And I would suggest it probably is in your favor to do that. So again, tinfoil hat. On one hand, absolutely there needs to be an inquiry as long as it's not a whitewash, and anyone found guilty of either carrying out acts or enabling acts to happen and this mass abuse, lock them away, throw away the key, be done with them. But stepping back, Rich, and looking at it, I'm thinking, okay, you've had well over a decade, nearer to 2 decades, to do something about this, and none of you have until now. So why now?
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's the perfect question. And the use of the term Asian Straight away, what do you think when I say Asian? I don't think myself Pakistani, or
No.
I think Chinese.
Well, yeah,
Japan.
exactly.
Straight away. So what are they doing? They're putting that little seed in your mind. I think you've hit the nail on the head. Tommy Robinson's come out and he said, oh, it's because of the women. All of this stuff gets weaponized and used. None of these people are doing this. Not to say none of them. Some of the lower levels ones will be, but the top brass will be actually doing this for a political reason. Obviously, it's all weaponry to them. So I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's Asian. Why use the term Asian? Well, scary Asian people from Japan, China, they're going to come in. We've got to be wary of China. It goes in the subconscious. Logically, you can override that and go, that makes no sense. But it goes in, and they want to China bad. And then Tommy Robinson, the likes of him, coming out with women need to be freed from this regime in Iran because of these grooming gangs and bad group. It's quite clear that button was pushed there for an absolute reason. I don't think it's landed. I really don't. There's too much going on. People are too all over the place with this stuff now. There's, like she said, it's like blitzkrieg. There's too much going on. But the seeds will seep in. So using the term Asian, I think, is absolutely specific to trying to get people to be scared of subconsciously the Chinese. Absolutely. I think that isn't there because there's no reason to use that term and the word that we can't say at all.
No, it's nothing happens by accident. I think that's the point, isn't it? That you try and get across to people all the time that actually none of this is organic. None of the words that are said, none of the wording, none of Xi Jinping's wording, none of Benjamin Netanyahu's wording is accidental or off the cuff or a throwaway line. Each line is there for a specific reason, to plant a seed. We spoke about it yesterday with Netanyahu talking about the fact that Iran wanted to assassinate Donald Trump. That's planted as ridiculous as that sounds, that will have planted a seed in Americans, so that if anything happens to Donald Trump, where are they looking? I mean, people like me and you would look straight at Benjamin Netanyahu, but he knows that most won't. It will go, their subconscious will go, where have I heard that? Iran were going to kill him, weren't they? Yeah, oh yeah. And that's the whole point of it. So all these things are done for a reason, mate. But we'll see where we go. I mean, me and you are back again tomorrow, aren't we? Actually, I think we're doing it all week together, which is cool. And so we'll see where we are tomorrow, Rich, because so much is going on. I think America will officially join the war within a week, I would say, if not sooner.
I hope not.
I hope not too, but I think they will.
Don't.
And they're already sending. They're already sending fleets out there, so I would suggest it's inevitable. The issue is something will have to happen to manufacture the consent between now and then. So I did see something actually. Just finally, I did see something this morning talking about the fact that China had sent media to Israel and were live streaming the skies above Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and one other city I'm trying to think of as well. It's the first time they've been doing that. So they're literally streaming live Chinese media. Well, that suggests to me, with my tinfoil hat on once again, that they're expecting something to happen.
Yeah, and they want their population to know it, so they have a reason to go in as well. It's all the same place. None of this has to happen unless the masses go along with it. You can't have a war without people going.
Exactly.
Just don't
no
go.
Soldiers, no war,
Don't
mate.
go.
No support for it, and it ends. That's the thing that people don't realise the power they have.
Yeah,
They don't.
just say no, not doing
We're
it.
spoke to like it's inevitability. It's inevitable. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, there's always been war. As long as it doesn't have to be, mate. It doesn't have to be.
No.
As long as you're
Doesn't
not
have to.
apathetic towards it.
There'll always be people who disagree. There'll always be some sort of conflict in that sense, but it doesn't have to be a world war where the whole place gets blown up. There's a slight difference. There is a kind of like a distance between those two. You had the IDF soldiers last week, and just quickly to drop this in, a classic example, a great example. They refused to go and get involved with this, IDF soldiers, because of Netanyahu's messianic elements within his government. They don't want anything to do with it. Don't have anything to do with it.
Exactly. Cheers, Rich. Thanks for watching, everyone. As always, Trending is brought to you in association with Iconic Coffee. If you head over to shop.iconic.com, use the code Trending, you get 10% off. And me and Rich will be back tomorrow. Take care, buddy. Bye, mate.
See you later. Ethnicity.
Nailed it.